So what is that? I don't know this. Where were you born?
I was born in Spencer,
You was born
Iowa.
in Spencer, Iowa. Were your parents were they have they been in Spencer their entire life, for
Um,
majority of their life?
Dad, was born here and grew up here. Mom's family kind of traveled all over the place.
Gotcha.
They went from different parts of Iowa down to Texas, and then ended up back in Iowa. Yep.
And then remind me again, uh, older, younger brothers. I know you have
Yep.
three sisters.
Three sisters. Linda's my oldest. Lori's next, and then I'm third, and then Sonny's my youngest.
Gotcha. So what? How did you get into sports? How did you like to play sports so much? Was it grandpa? Was it?
I think it was Grandpa. Um, all I ever heard was how good of a pitcher Grandpa
Oh
was.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and Grandpa grew up in the time where things were tough. He grew up through the Depression, and so he didn't get to play sports like I did.
Mm-hmm.
But he played on the high school baseball team, and then he played on what they had back then was town teams.
Yep.
So they travel around town to town, and he all I would hear from people after I grew up was how good of a pitcher
Oh yeah.
Grandpa was. But Grandpa went to the Korean War, so he never got to go on, I guess, to the next step.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. But
Um,
that's where I got it.
uh-huh.
Grandma was never big into any sports or anything, and Grandma hated it when I played football
Because you're gonna get hurt.
because I was going to get hurt. And I was like you. I wasn't big when I was in high school. I started out probably 110 pounds, um, and so she knew I was going to be just a blocking dummy. But I didn't get my height till I was like in my junior year of high school. So
When you were well, I'll ask. Where'd you go to high school?
South Clay High School,
Where is that?
Gillette Grove, Iowa.
How many people were in your graduating class?
18 and a half.
18. So I have to ask, what is the half a person?
One of the girls hadn't had the baby yet.
So in that, so obviously it's pretty small. What all sports did you play?
In that small of a school, everybody pretty much had to play everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in football. I was the tight end. I was the defensive end. I was the punter and kicker. Basketball, my freshman and sophomore year, I was about 6'1", and so I was the off guard to the friend that you asked me who my best friend was.
Yep.
Don Sultan, across the river. My freshman year was a senior, and he was about 5'11", still is. He's a little shorty, but he was the point guard. I was the off guard. I was the off guard my sophomore year, and then I hit my growth spurt. So I went from about 6'1" to 6'5", and so then I was center my junior and senior year. And then fall, we ran track. So I was a high jumper and high hurdler and relay runner. And then in summer, we were into baseball. And I started in the outfield my freshman year. And then after that year, the seniors graduated, and that was our majority of our baseball team. So then after that, me and another kid platooned shortstop and pitching. One would pitch one day and the other would pitch the next game. So that's what I did.
What was your favorite sport to play in high school?
Basketball.
Basketball.
Yeah.
That makes a little bit of sense. So growing up, who are your favorite teams? Who are your favorite players to watch?
Pro?
Yeah, or I guess if you have a college team too.
College team, Hawkeyes were always my favorite team because we got them. When I was growing up, we just had 3 channels, 4, 9, and 13. 13 was the Sioux Falls channel, which really was like a third world country. 4 and 9 were Sioux City. And so we would always see the Hawkeye football games on Saturdays. So that's what I grew up with. So I was Hawkeye basketball, Hawkeye football was what I loved to watch. Pro, I am a Lakers basketball fan, have been. up until the stupidity that's kind of going through them right now. Baseball, I've always been a Yankees fan. And that's kind of silly from being in the middle of the United States. But when I was young, I might have told you before, my cousins loved the Dodgers. And it seemed like every other year it was the Dodgers and the Yankees. Mm-hmm. So they would want to make a bet. So they'd take the Dodgers, I'd take the Yankees. So I've always been a Yankees fan. Football, my team is the Steelers. And for the same reason, they are huge Dallas fans. It seemed like every other year was Dallas and the Steelers in the Super Bowl. And so they wanted Dallas when we bet. And so I took the Steelers and have always been a Steelers fan.
So then through high school, obviously basketball was your favorite sport. Mm-hmm. And then you eventually thought about going to college, or was college when you kind of started to go through high school, did you think you were going to go to college? Did you think you were going to play any sports through college?
Did I think I was going to go to college in general? I really didn't know if I was going to go to college. My older sisters had gone to college. And so I guess that was the next sensible step to me, because Dad didn't have a lot of ground and he had some health problems. And so when he bought this acreage or this farm here of, just shy of a section, it'd be 600 acres. He had bought just one little part of it to start with. And then he went ahead and bought 3 other tracts of it. And people were asking his mom and dad, what's wrong with Wendell? Has he got mental problems? During these hard times, mm-hmm. He shouldn't be stepping out like that. He mm-hmm. must have mental problems. He probably needs to be kind of put away mm-hmm. someplace. Mm-hmm. But Dad could just see the good opportunity to buy the local adjoining mm-hmm. pieces of property mm-hmm. in the same section. But as time went, and I was growing up, Dad was always the worker. Dad would be out from early in the morning till late at night, even with his health problems that he had in his kind of stomach area. And so it really never sank in with me that I wanted to farm. That was always what was comfortable with me. But so when I got to the end of high school age, college was kind of the next common sense thing. And that's really what Grandma and Grandpa pushed all of us to do. They said we all needed to get further education. But I had no idea where I wanted to go or what I wanted to study. So then when I grew and I did quite well at basketball, and I did well in the other sports too. I made it to state track, was a fair pitcher, was a pretty good receiver, but our football team stunk with 18 people out for football. It was horrible. Yeah. But basketball came easy to me. And so...
How good were you guys in high school?
Good story. My freshman year, we were 0-18.
Oh.
My sophomore year, we were 1-17.
Progress.
My junior year, we were 5-13.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first 3 years, we won 6 games.
Yep.
My senior year, we went 16-3.
Ooh.
So we turned it around very well.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I got to play my final game at the Sieben Center in BV down at Storm Lake.
Of your high school career?
Of my high school career.
That's cool.
So I got to play in front of these fans that, little did I know, I was going to get to play in front of the next 4 years. So that was kind of cool. So then when I was trying to decide, Grandpa took me around to a bunch of schools.
Just, I'm assuming around here?
Around here. I got a letter in the mail from Iowa and Iowa State that they didn't have a scholarship for me, but I was welcome to walk on and try. But I told Dad, I said, I'm not comfortable with a big school. I think I'd get lost and I'd have problems down there. So I just wasn't interested in doing it. And I think that was the right decision. He took me to Northwestern in Orange City because that's where my 2 older sisters went. There was no way and you know where I was going to go there. Not going to do it. Not that it was a bad school. It was a great school. Number one, I didn't want to go to chapel every day. Number two, I didn't want to follow in my sister's footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just no way. I went to Dort, which was another church school, and I didn't have any ties to it. At least I was comfortable with Northwestern, but
Mm-hmm.
Dort I had no ties to.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went to Fort Dodge, the Iowa Central Community
Mm-hmm.
College. We went to Iowa Lakes Community College up here at Esterville. I got a pretty nice offer of a scholarship from both Northwestern and Iowa Lakes. Northwestern was going to give me most of a free ride scholarship to come and play. They are NAIA, so they could give sports scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
I went down to BV because it was close and checked that out. It wasn't a good program. The coach was a good recruiter. And that just seemed like it was close to home, and that's kind of what I wanted. I want to be close to home.
Mm-hmm.
Dad kind of pushed me to go to Iowa Lakes Community College. He said, you go to a 4-year school, you're probably not going to get to play till maybe your junior year, maybe even your senior year. So if you go to a community college, you'll have a better chance of playing. And I told him, I said, I don't want to go to a school for 2 years and then end up turning around and having to make another change.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go someplace that can be home for 4 years and then I'm done. So he kind of disagreed with me, but I went to BV.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good match. It was close to home. I could come home whenever I wanted to. In fact, I had a hard time with being homesick. The first, 6, 7 weekends, I went home every weekend.
Yeah.
And then whatever that weekend was, the 6th or 7th weekend, I called home and I said, hey, what are you guys doing this weekend? And Mom and Dad said, no, not much. And I said, well, I think I'm going to come home again this weekend. And Grandpa said, no, I don't think you're going to. He says, you're either going to decide whether you're going to go to college, or if you want to be home, then you can just drop out and you can come home. And I was like, boy, that just crushed me. Crushed me that Grandpa would not let me come home.
Mm-hmm.
But it was at that stage where I needed to decide. And I was really at that point of almost dropping out of school.
Oh, yeah.
It was I was just really struggling with it, struggling with classes. Just didn't want to study because I didn't feel good there. And then I guess a prayer answered. The basketball coach started 2-a-days partway through the football season, so we had to start lifting early in the morning, and then we had to go in and shoot around, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that got my mind off of stuff, and everything just started to kind of click. Then I made some friends, made some good friends. We did stuff together, and then it wasn't that big of a deal. And the crazy part is I went home the first 6 weekends, and after that, I don't think I went home, but maybe for holidays after that. And my sophomore, junior year, I ended up working and staying at the campus or an apartment down there. And I worked at the school in summer, repairing the dorm rooms. And then at night, I cut meat at the Fairway Meat Market. And then on the weekends, I ran a basketball camp for high school teams. So I refereed and put camps together for high school teams. So BV was a good match for me.
So then getting into actual basketball at BV, when did you actually start to play? Did you see any game? Did you see any floor time?
My first freshman year games were up at Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I called home, and at that time even, my freshman... No.
Oh,
Looney.
You're good.
Sorry.
All right. So when did you see actual game
Playing time?
court
Okay.
field?
My first college game was up at La Crosse, Wisconsin, and then the next night at Eau Claire, or vice versa. I can't remember specifically. And I called mom and dad and I said, going into the season, I said, BV doesn't even have a junior varsity team. I said, so we've got 45 guys out for basketball. I said, I'm a freshman. I'm more than likely not going to get to play for a couple years. I said, but all I can do is try and see if maybe my size or my jumping ability. My jumping ability was my best aspect. If that maybe gets me a little time off the bench. So I called them going into that first traveling weekend up there in Wisconsin, and I said, well, I made the traveling team. I said, I doubt that I'll play much, or if any at all, but I said, at least I made the team. Dad said, okay. And he says, well, I'm just about ready to start pigging because he farrowed pigs at the time. He says, don't plan on seeing us. I said, well, that's fine. I said, because I won't see any time anyway. So just before the game started, here come my mom and dad walking in. So that was pretty cool that they would make a trip all the way out there, even though I wasn't going to probably play. But I ended up my first game scoring, 8 or 9 points off the bench. And I had about that many assists at that time, we had a center that was 6'9". And so I gave him assists, which was kind of good. Then I played that role throughout my freshman year. I was kind of the sixth man, the first guy off the bench. And I averaged, 6 or 7 points a game my freshman year. We were heavy again in college when I was a freshman with seniors, which I guess is normal. When they graduated, our sophomores and juniors from that year were quite, I don't want to say weak, but they didn't have a lot of experience. And good athletes. We had a couple guys from Florida. We had Tim Lauk, a good friend, could jump out of the gym. But none of us had played that much. So we were really building a team from scratch, again, my sophomore year. So we didn't have, I'm trying to think if we were 500 my freshman year, probably right in that range. And we were about a 500 team all the way through college. We never really had a great team. So, but that's where I started. I was starting up in Wisconsin as a freshman off the bench.
So what years were your best years?
My best years?
In regards to basketball.
Basketball? My junior year was my best year. Each year got better. I think I averaged about 7 points my freshman year off the bench. My sophomore year, I was still coming off the bench or maybe starting. I was kind of platooning with another guy, and I averaged about 10 points a game. My junior year, I started and I averaged about 14 points a game. My senior year, I started, of course, and I was on a pretty good tear my senior year. Halfway through the year, I was averaging about 19 points a game and about 12 rebounds a game. And I took a charge halfway through the season in a game, and the guy I was guarding landed on me and broke my wrist on my shooting hand.
Ooh.
And I just couldn't flex it after that. So I started shooting left-handed, which was not near as good. I didn't have near the range, but I could still move inside. So I finished my senior year, and I was a preseason All-American going into my senior year. So that was good, and I was glad that I could finish out. But yeah, my junior year would have been my best since that happened my senior year.
Mm-hmm. So two things that I've heard that have happened. Do you still hold was it rebound record at BV?
No. I hold the rebound record at Briar Cliff for a single season game.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy back in the 60s, last name of Aarons, that came to BV, and he is the all-time scorer and all-time rebounding record. But at the time when I left, I was second in rebounding behind him. But he was like 6'11".
So he had a few.
So he had a few inches on me and sounded like a really good athlete. So he's still got the all-time scoring records and rebounding records. But I have the single game rebounding record down at the Briar Cliff Holiday Tournament. We went down there my junior year, and I ended up with 27 rebounds in a game.
That's a lot. And then also, I've heard a few stories about this, but you've broken a few backboards in your life. You want to tell me about some of those?
Yeah.
First, do you know the number? How many?
Two.
Yep.
2 backboards. When I was growing up, Todd Birkenpass was the point guard or off guard, shooting guard for Iowa Hawkeyes from Mapleton, Iowa. And so my old high school coach left South Clay and went up to Terrell High School, which is just 15 miles north. And so one summer he called me. He said, would you mind coming up and helping with the basketball camp? And I said, yeah, that's fine. He says, Todd Birkenpass is going to be here. He'll handle all the dribbling drills, and then you can handle the inside offensive moves and the post defense for the guys. I said, yeah, that'll be great. Small school, just like I came from. I thought, this will be fun. So we got up there, and in the morning, it was going to be a week-long, Monday through Friday camp. And in the morning, we ran all these drills and did all these defensive things, and it was just neat because Todd Birkenpass was a big name in Iowa with Hawkeye basketball. And then right before lunch, we were supposed to scrimmage a little bit with the guys. So Birkenpass says, Barry, he says, we'll have some fun with the guys. He says, next rebound you get, he says, you outlet it to me, you fly down the other side, and I'll throw you a lob, and you dunk it through, and we'll have some fun with the guys. So I said, good. Well, he couldn't have drawn it up any better. Got the rebound. I outletted it to him at half court. I went down the far side. He gave me a beautiful pass. I dunked her through. Of course, I like to hang on the rim a little bit.
Yep.
And not even thinking that Terrell does not have breakaway rims.
Yep.
And I shattered that thing. And the coach's eyes, I look at him, and the coach's eyes are just bugging out. And I went over, I said, I'm sorry, Coach. I don't know what to tell you. He says, and of course, he was trying to be a good coach. He's like, guys, this is what we're going to do. We've still got the basket on this end. He says, we're going to get this all cleaned up. You guys are going to go home today. Tomorrow, you're going to come back. We're going to do our drills. We're going to scrimmage a little bit just on the one end, and we'll get this other one replaced sometime, and no big deal. So I came back the next day. Of course, when you're 18 years old, 19 years old, you're kind of young and dumb sometimes, and you don't think. And Todd Birkenpass, we were scrimmaging that second day. He put up a shot, and the thing hit right on the front of the rim and went right up in the middle of the air. And I thought, this is perfect.
Yeah, you got it.
So I went up, grabbed the thing, and I rammed her back through and shattered that one. So they ended up canceling the basketball camp the rest of the week. And Grandpa had to help me out because it was $1,500 for the 2 bankboards.
Oh, my gosh. That's great. That's a good story. So what, out of all your years of basketball, what, if you had to say which one was your best or had the most memories? So not necessarily that you played the best in, but just like you remember the most of like, that was my heyday. That was what I look back to when I think of my.
I would have to say my junior year, for a few reasons. Number one, it was my scoring and rebounding best year. I was hoping my senior year would be, but with the injury, my junior year was the best scoring and rebounding year that I had. Also, my junior year, we got to go to Hawaii for a Christmas tournament. We got to play Hawaii Pacific, Hawaii Loa, and Chaminade down there on a 3-game tournament. We didn't win a game, but we played Chaminade 2 nights after they had knocked off North Carolina, and we had it down to a 3-point game with just shy of 2 minutes to go, and then we had to start fouling, so we ended up losing by 9 to Chaminade. So that was cool. That was the first team that we ever played. I was 6'5". We had a 6'6" guy, but he liked to shoot from outside, so he didn't play inside a whole lot. But that's fine. But that was the first team that we played that had 3 7-foot centers that we had to bang with. So that was interesting. And then I guess that would probably, I'm trying to think. And the best part of that year, when we got into conference play, we were picked towards the bottom. We had had a lot of turnover. We had had a lot of people transfer out that they thought were supposed to be pretty solid. So we were picked towards the bottom of the conference. And we finished at the middle of the conference. But trying to think of who it was. Central was supposed to be at the top, and Wartburg was supposed to be at the top. And Wartburg had all of these top prospects that had gone to Wartburg. And so they were a hands-down favorite. And we beat Wartburg twice that year, and we were the only team to beat them twice that year. So after that, we were kind of the dark horse, but we still only finished middle of the conference. But it was fun.
And then was it just last year or 2 years ago, you ended up getting inducted into the Buena Vista Athletic Hall of Fame. How was that?
That was humbling, exciting. I just enjoyed that immensely.
Mm-hmm.
Buena Vista was such a good match for me. It was a small school. I loved the family atmosphere, and there's nothing like hearing the whole place. They would call me BA. That was my nickname. And you'd hear this thing just ring through the rafters. They'd be calling your name. And that is a cool deal for me. So then getting called back into the Hall of Fame,
mm-hmm.
Because there were really good athletes down there in the past, and there were really good ladies teams. We had the number 1 scoring lady at BV when I was there. She was a girlfriend of my roommate, and she was only about 5'4", 5'5",
wow.
And she would just bomb threes, and she could run the court the whole game long, and she averaged 34 points a game. So you had these really good athletes, and wrestling was huge. They had national champion wrestlers, So I thought, when I graduated, I thought, I had a good career, and it was a lot of fun, and I scored quite a few points.
Did you think when you ended your college career that you were going to be in the Hall of Fame?
No, I did not. No, because I figured you'd have to be at least a conference champion
mm-hmm.
to do that.
Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah.
So then now we're going to shift into after college. So once you graduated and you end up in Chicago, what were you doing there?
I worked for Norwest Financial, making personal loans, auto loans, and first and second mortgages, any kind of loans. And then we collected loans to repossess cars, all kinds of stuff.
And then when did because eventually you moved down to Tennessee. When was that? How long were you in Chicago? And then when was?
Yep. I was in Chicago about a year and a half, maybe just a little over a year and a half. I was engaged to a lady in Chicago. She was 11 years older than me. And every time we got up within so many months of the wedding, she got cold feet and she would call it off. Well, she called it off 3 times. And I told her, I said, that's fine. If you're not at that point of being ready to get married, I understand. That's fine. But I said, you take your time. if we ever put this wedding back on and this happens again, then it'll be done for good.
Mm-hmm.
So she took a few months, and it moved pretty quickly. I mean, she came back and she said, "No, I'm ready. So we put the wedding back on. We got within so many days of the wedding, and she called it off again. So I called my district manager and I said, "Move me or lose me. I'm going to go do something else. Either I'm going to go back home or I'm going to do something else." So he called me back and he says, "How about Cleveland, Tennessee?" I said, "Anywhere's fine. Doesn't matter." He says, "Okay, report to Cleveland, Tennessee a week from Monday." He says, "We'll give you 10 days to get down there." And so I took over a branch in Cleveland, Tennessee, which would be a half hour north of Chattanooga.
Gotcha.
And that's how I met Dana.
So then go through, how long was it until when you moved to you met Dana for the first time? And then tell that story of how you guys met.
Okay. When I moved to Cleveland, Tennessee, we took over the office. I suppose I was down there maybe 6 months, I would suppose, and we had a lot of heavy work to do. We had a lot of card paper that was very delinquent. So me and my assistant manager, number one, had to hire a secretary for the office. And so the first 6 months were pretty heavy. But on the weekends, we had heard about this bar down in Chattanooga called the Governor's Lounge. So we decided we would go down to the Governor's Lounge. So I went down there and I met this young lady, and she liked to dance. And so we started meeting there every Friday and Saturday night. And that kind of grew. All of a sudden, we were going to movies and different things. And that is where I met Dana. I would go down usually with $50 in my pocket. She would have usually $40 cash, $50. And I would wake up the next morning. I'd have no money. I'd ask her, and she would have no money. And I would have a Visa bill in my pocket for $40 or $50. So
it sounds like you guys had a little fun.
We did. We had fun. Good. Yeah.
Because then you eventually had Megan, and you had Taylor, and you had Chris.
Yeah.
Megan and Taylor were in Tennessee, right?
Yep.
And then you moved to Iowa, and then to have Chris.
Yep.
Why did you move back to Iowa?
It always felt right for me to farm. That's all I ever knew. That's all I was ever comfortable with. The banking business was fine. Probably would have been better off financially if I would have stayed with the banking business. But all I ever knew was farming. Not that I took that big a part in it, but I would help Grandpa with baling hay, shelling corn, walking beans, harvest. I wasn't the best at chores because I would do them one night and then I might have baseball practice or something. They're busy with something, so I wouldn't get them done. So he would still have to do chores a lot of times late at night when he came in. But it just felt right to me. But, again, Grandpa had told me when I was getting ready to graduate college, we don't have enough ground for the both of us. So in my mind, that told me that just wasn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
So when Megan was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Taylor was born. I left Norwest and I went to the Associates Financial. Same type of work, same loans and everything, collecting. But they sent me to Jackson, Tennessee, over on the west side by Memphis. And that was fine. I made good money there, probably the most money I have ever made with their bonus system. But out of the blue one day, Grandpa called and said, "Hey, how's everything going?" "Good." He says, "Just wanted to let you know, I'm 65 years old." He says, "And if you're ever thinking about coming back farming," he says, "I could probably slow down and you could kind of work your way in." And I said, "Okay." He says, "So you think about it and let me know what you think about it." I said, "Okay, that's fine." So I got off the phone, and I think it took me about 7 minutes to call Dana and ask her if there was one more move in our lives, would she go for it? She says, "Well, where?" And I said, "Well, it'd be to the farm in Iowa." And she says, well, as long as we're together as a family, I guess I probably would. Then I called my district manager and I gave him a 2-month notice. I said, if you want a 2-month notice, I'll give you a 2-month notice, but I'm going back home farming. So they accepted my 2-month notice. And it took me a total of about 7 minutes to get off the phone with Grandpa and go through those calls and then call Grandpa back and say, I'll be back in 2 months for planning time. And he says, I thought you'd have to think about it. I said, I've been thinking about it ever since I went to college. I said, but it just didn't ever seem like there was that opportunity. So I was back then. We put the first crop in. We had to find a place to live because we made a decision so quickly. Grandma and Grandpa didn't have time to get out of the farmhouse. Mm-hmm. So Dana and I and Megan and Taylor had to find a place to live. So we lived at the old Maury place, 2 miles straight south of here. And the next 21 years have been a blur because Grandpa, who said he was ready to slow down and step aside, still is farming with me. Yeah. So.
So then these 3 kids, they all played sports and all were pretty successful. Yeah. What did you make them play? Did they want to play? Did you gently encourage them to go play sports, or how did they end up playing sports?
I gently encouraged them to the point that was the only option. I love sports. Mm-hmm. I love sports. And that's what I'm comfortable with. And so I coached Megan in basketball. I tried to help her in volleyball. She never really got into softball. But then I coached Taylor in basketball. We traveled everywhere with Megan and Taylor on volleyball with these other coaches. I didn't coach that, but we just traveled with them. Basketball, I coached both of them for quite a few years and helped on some other teams that other coaches were coaching. Megan did track, and she got into high jump, which is what I went to state in. But you could tell that wasn't really necessarily her interest. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of one of those things that she was going to do. And then Taylor got into softball. And Taylor could have been was a tremendous pitcher, could have been probably a much better pitcher if she had a pitching coach, that could have really spent the time with her. But Taylor did very well in that. Christopher, I helped coach the Little Tyke Football League, assistant coach that. I coached his traveling basketball. I coached his baseball team for a few years. Hopefully I wasn't demanding of them, but I wanted to kind of push them
to do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sports is such a good opportunity that it can grow your confidence. You can have a lot of fun. You can build a lot of friendships. And you can use it all your life. So
yeah. There's more to sports than just the physical aspect of keeping in shape.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap it up here pretty quick. What was like the moment I want to do for all 3 of the kids that, and I mean it doesn't have to be well since we're talking about sports, like you felt the most like proud when you saw them do something, whether it was when they jumped over someone and dunked it, or if they helped pick up a fallen teammate or something like that. Like what was the one that made the most proud for each of your kids?
For each of my kids, Megan, I would say her first game I'm trying to remember if it was a freshman or sophomore, but it was her first game that she started as varsity, and it might have even been a junior year.
What sport?
I can't remember. Basketball. Yeah, basketball. Megan did well in volleyball. She just really needed a volleyball coach. She didn't have. Taylor didn't either. They did very well for really not having top-notch coaches. Basketball, Megan's first game that she started was over at Unity in Orange City. And they had this all-state girl from Unity. Kendra DeYoung was her name. And Megan outscored her. Kendra had 17 points, and Megan ended up scoring 18. The bad part with that was I don't know what happened, but the coach all of a sudden decided, well, Megan's going to become my point guard now, and you're not to shoot anymore. And so he moved her to point guard, and she could dribble fine, but she was one of the taller girls on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, our team started struggling because of this move he made, but he was just bullheaded, and he was going to do that. That was the way it was. I'm very proud about Megan because she didn't get her head down. She kept trying, and she wasn't going to take away from the team. So I was very proud of her. Number one, she has a great touch on a shot, and she could have had a great year that year, but that was out of her control.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, I have many proud moments with all of my kids, but Taylor had the same thing. Taylor could go through people. She had the strength in basketball. She would put her head down and she would just go through and she would punish people.
Just like her daddy?
Oh, she loved, and she didn't know a shot she didn't like.
Yep.
And I love that. I mean, she'd pop up from anywhere. It didn't matter if it was inside or if it was 30 feet outside. She was ready to shoot. And that's kind of how I was. I loved to score. And the coach did the same thing to her. He took her from inside and off the wing and put her on the point guard and told her, you're going to get this to the other girls and you're not supposed to shoot. And the team struggled because we had short little guards and he wasn't using them. And so everybody was out of place. She didn't let that get her down either. She struggled with it her senior year, but she was very classy in that. Also, her volleyball was fun. If she had a coach, she could have been a powerhouse because she could swing hard in volleyball. And Taylor was a four sport letter winner. Also, if she had a pitching coach, she could have been tremendously strong. She just had the leverage due to long legs and long arms. She had good control on her pitches, and she was learning a couple of different pitches, but Greg Jones, her coach, was the coach, but we just didn't really have that pitching coach to put her over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But so those are some fun things with the girls. Christopher, I was a little more overbearing with because girls, I thought I'm supposed to kind of coddle along. Boys, he's supposed to be tough. He can do this stuff. Well, Christopher had no interest in football to begin with after that little pee-wee league, so he ran cross country. Well, I'm not a runner, so I couldn't help him with that. Basketball, I pushed him hard on, but Christopher's sport is soccer. Christopher loves soccer, and Christopher could have played at the college level. He had an offer to go to Iowa Lakes, but he was comfortable with both girls going up to South Dakota State, and South Dakota State didn't have a soccer team. But Christopher had great touch, and he was a good leader. He played defender most of the times, and that's what his strength was. But best time with Christopher on his soccer was when we took the whole family over to a 4-game friendly over in Europe. So that was a great time.
That'd have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Whether it's for sports or life in general, just give me like the best piece of advice.
Oh boy, best piece of advice. Tried to teach. I think Dana and I tried to teach all of our kids: be humble, always be happy, keep a smile on your face, and do the very best you can. That's all anybody can ask of you. And I think our kids have done very well. They're very personable. It doesn't matter if you're a very important person in a corporation or a company or in our community, or if you are a janitor. We had one of the janitors come up to us and they said, your kids treat me just like I'm the superintendent of the school. Says they say hi to me every morning. They always have a smile on their face. And that's what I'm most proud of with my kids is they are good people.